May the 4th, 2020. Guys, you're looking at current images from today from the Solar Dynamics Observatory. Now, that is a satellite that is between the Earth and the Sun, and it gives us this Earth-facing perspective. It's at the Lagrange 1 point, which is about 1 million miles from the Earth and about 92 million miles from the Sun. What we're dealing with is some new activity, and I think it's starting to signal that we're getting into a new solar cycle. This prominence right here, guys, if you look at the bottom, it's called a solar prominence. You got 4. You got 1, 2, 3, and then this one that explodes here. You also have a sunspot. This is all new activity. But the size of this prominence alone, guys, the Earth, dozens of Earths could pass through the hole that you see as it loops back towards the Sun. You see that right there? Dozens of Earths. And we'll look at a singular photograph. What you're dealing with here is helium is being released by the Sun. And because of the magnetic field of the Sun, it's captured in this magnetic loop and pulled back in. Watch how the direction of this feeds back. It's called a solar prominence, and they can ride very high. And what can happen, as you see in the top left, they can get so large, or something can happen close by. One end can snap, and it will throw a coronal mass ejection out into space. And if it's Earth facing, it will be coming in our direction. Now, Earth facing, and we're looking from the Earth, or from an Earth facing perspective from the Solar Dynamics Observatory, SDO. It's on our website. It's been there for years. Look over in the left and scroll down. You can see this satellite has 12 different cameras that give you different filters depending on what you're looking for. Now, the reason I'm talking about it is a few videos ago we talked about Malachi, and that there were 2 versions or 2 words of the Sun in there, S-U-N and S-O-N. And the S-U-N tied with Helios in the Sun, and it said that there will be a great healing coming from this star, our star. A great healing. And we also know that in Revelation, that one of the angels will pour out his vial upon the Sun. Something will happen, and the beast kingdom will be cast into darkness. And again, we don't know if it will be a solar flare, what it will be. We have no idea, but we do know that something is going to happen. And again, going back to Fukushima, we were tracking on that day about 3 different X flares that had come from the surface of the Sun pointed towards the planet. We were in solar maximum of the last solar cycle. And it looks like we may be cranking back into the beginning of the next uptick. But in grand solar minimum, each solar cycle weakens. And they happen about every 11.8 years. You go down about half of that cycle, and the other half of that 11.8 years, you're rising up, and then it starts peaking down. It, by the way, matches exactly the orbit of the Sun's gas twin, Jupiter. Exactly, the orbit. And that orbit is not a circular orbit. It's an elongated orbit. In other words, half the orbit, Jupiter's getting closer to the Sun. Then because of the elongated outflow of that orbit, it gets further away from it for half of that 11.8 years, maxes out and comes back in. Now, again, we were tracking 3 different X flares that were occurring in the Sun a few days before the Fukushima earthquake, to tell you how powerful this can become. And as Japan turned that afternoon, it was about 2:45 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I think, and it was directly sun facing, Tokyo was, and that solar flare struck our planet. All the instruments picked it up. Everybody knew it was happening. The earthquake happened as that pressure hit, and we have, to this day, nuclear radiation leaking into the Pacific Ocean. A third of the Earth's waters, the Pacific is. Millions of tons of radioactive water have been pouring in the entire time. The media has shut it down. They've shut down the sites that talk about that. So as you look at what leaders you can trust on this planet, not a damn one. And look at what's going on now with these tests and all. But anyway, you can deal with the solar flares, which, again, the Carrington event was a solar flare. Fukushima earthquake was a solar flare. Now, other things can come from space besides these flares, and one is a gamma ray burst. And in 2004, during that great quake that hit in Asia, Banda Aceh, remember that? It really took a pounding, and the initial reports were 250,000 people, but I think that's close to 400,000 people now that lost their lives. But it wasn't the sun at that time, but it was another God-controlled object in the universe. A gamma ray burst hit the Earth. It tore a large hole in the atmosphere, and that great quake and the tsunami struck our planet. So there's several things that can happen. I don't know if it will be a quake, and I'm not saying, no, let me back up. I don't know if it will be a tsunami involved. More than likely, whether it's a solar prominence eruption that causes a filament release or a solar flare, the effects can be devastating on this planet. But remember in Malachi, to God's children is a healing thing. To the beast kingdom, it is darkness. And in your heart of hearts, you've got to realize that with 5G and the satellites that are wrapping our planet, with Elon Musk, and he's dealing with not only Starlink, but Neuralink. Neuralink. We're talking about this in linking up your neurons and your nervous system to AI. But when we look at that, it appears to me that in one move, one fell swoop, for the believers, whatever happens on that day will be a good thing. For the kingdom of the beast, it will shut down their artificial intelligence and their power grid, because Satan does not have supernatural power the way that our Father in heaven does. So he has to recreate it, mimic it, but in artificial terms, and hire people like Gates and other people to try to implement this. And when I say hire, I don't mean financially. I'm talking about selling your soul, and that's what we're seeing. But I just wanted to point out that with the things that we're seeing going on in the very quick overtake of our planet with this electronically controlled technology that could be used for devastating results, then there's a plan B. And we're going to have to pay attention to it. Guys, things are going to get worse before they get better. But the thing that you need to do, and I need to do, is focus on the good side. We need to think about getting our lives straight, doing the things that we were told to do to try to get through this devastating period that the entire planet is going through now. All the nations are being devastated financially. Why? Because you have to devastate and create chaos to bring about your idea of a perfect world. And that's what the NWO is doing. They're in a losing battle, but they will not admit it to the end. They will burn it down before they leave it. Unfortunately, the man that has a real fire has a plan for the New World Order. But if I say anything, I guess important in the video is get yourself right, because you want to be on the side that receives the healing and then eternity. But guys, as we watch this new solar cycle begin, and with the shields weaker, things can get very active, very quick. If you watch my channels, we've seen during the solar maximums in this 11.8 year cycle, tremendous energy bursting from the sun, things you would never imagine happening. If you're just coming into YouTube or watching the sun for the last few years, guys, you've seen nothing. And what you're looking at right here is just the beginning of an awakening of the next solar cycle. And is that timed for this takeover by the New World Order? Of course it is. We're watching it, guys. It's a heads up. Be safe.